Thank you, Senator Murray. So let's table set. It's an election year in which a Democratic incumbent president is running behind. So a decision has been made to raise abortion to a high profile, to change the setting, to invite a lot of folks to put us on TV. It's partisan politics being played out in a committee hearing. But let me point out as well, it's not entirely partisan. Louisiana's pro-life law was written by a female Democratic state senator and written and signed into law by a Democratic governor, and that female Democratic state senator was reelected with wide margins. So there is a breadth across the political spectrum of people who have a different way of framing this. My Democratic colleagues want you to think that Republicans believe terrible things. They'll attempt to normalize a decision to abort a child. But a Republican would say that you can't normalize a procedure, at least this Republican, in which the intent is to end a life. Don't be misled. This is a life. This is a life. Does anyone say that that child is not a life? How could you not? I'm a doctor. I see that you have to take care of that mama. You have to take care of that mama. But you have to recognize that there is another life there as well. This is not just a collection of cells. This is a child that, if delivered, will live. And maybe this one too, and that one as well. So let's have a national dialogue. Let's actually explore this as opposed to exploit it for political advantage. In medical school, I was taught to care for every patient who walks in the door and to recognize that when a woman is pregnant, there are two patients there. And the second that baby gets air, it doesn't matter how small and how vulnerable, how unsustainable, how weak. The doctors, the nurses, the institution does everything they can to save their life. And by golly, don't you want them to do that? Don't you want the people who are entrusted with the health care to have that ethic? I believe that the responsibility to protect and save the child shouldn't be determined by the arbitrary difference of being inside or outside the womb. I am unapologetically pro-life. Scientifically and morally, there's no difference in the value of a child whether she is in her mother's arms or whether she is in her mother's womb. The science is clear. This is just not a clump of cells. And this is a difficult poster to look at. I can tell you it's difficult. The reason it's difficult is because you recognize that by their policies, it should be legal to abort that child. It is difficult, but let's frame it for what it is. How can we dehumanize this? And yet this is what it's an attempt to do. At what point do my Democratic colleagues believe that a child deserves to live? It does a disservice to the mother to dehumanize the unborn child and discuss this issue as only the right to abort or not to abort. This is one of the most significant decisions a woman will ever make. We should not trivialize. Now, I understand and accept the need for exceptions to laws that regulate abortion under certain circumstances. But unlike some of our testimony here, terminating life does not spare a woman from potential grief. This should never be an easy decision. If so, we've lost our moral compass. And I just want people to read the entire testimony of Dr. Francis, in which she refutes a lot of what was said kind of blithely, and she actually puts scientific data behind it. And as a physician, fear-mongering, I find infuriating. A woman experiencing the emotionally and physically painful experience of miscarriage or an ectopic pregnancy is already grappling with the loss of her unborn child, and yet this committee hearing would take this vulnerable moment of that woman's life and misrepresent it and use it for political gain. There is no law in any state preventing a doctor from treating a patient going through a miscarriage or an ectopic pregnancy, or from preventing the saving of the life of a mother. That is called health care. That is not an abortion. One of the most inspirational medical professors I ever said that in healthcare and medicine, our highest calling is truth. And frankly, that's why I find it frustrating that fellow physicians are misleading on these facts or corrupt the truth for a political viewpoint. While it's disappointing that my colleagues would say things that are not true, deceiving Americans about Republicans' stand on the issue, it's also reprehensible that they mislead Americans on the Democrats' own extreme views. Now, Democrats will say that they want to codify Roe v. Wade. That's not true. The truth is that the Democratic policies go beyond Roe. Their marquee legislation would legalize late-term abortion in every state aborting this child. Ban states that prevent coerced abortion, allow strangers to convince an underage child to get an abortion without notifying the parents that she is pregnant. Perhaps that pregnancy was due to abuse. Shouldn't the parents know? Why should the parents' rights be abrogated? And eviscerate the conscience rights of healthcare professionals who have moral or religious objections to abortion. Speak about driving people out of the healthcare field. Now, Senator Kaine has a bill that explicitly codifies Roe into law. The only Democrats willing to co-sponsor are Senators Sinema and Manchin, neither one of whom call themselves Democrats by now. So it begs the question, why does Senator Kaine's bill to codify Roe not have more Democratic support? Well, it makes a good rallying cry, but the policy of codifying Roe is too conservative for the fringes that now define the debate in the Democratic Party. There are 9 states plus Washington, D.C., whose laws right now, allow for abortion up to parturition. The child can be ready to go through the birth canal, and abortion is legalized. Not because of the life of the mother, just to legalize it. That is where the Democratic Party has gone. That should give everybody a moral pause. That should give us all a moral pause. Now, I ask my Democratic colleagues, can you designate a point at which a pregnancy should not be terminated unless for the life of the mother or instead of some extenuating circumstances? Can you tell me if it's here or here or here? I think that's a fair question. I invite everybody to be a doctor who's trying to balance the needs of the unborn child with that of the mom. My Democratic colleagues may also claim that abortions are low-risk procedures, claiming that they're so safe they can be done without medical supervision. Not entirely accurate, minimizing the potential complications, but that's the way you can kind of feel better about this. And again, I refer people once more to Dr. Francis's complete testimony, not just the 5 minutes she'll give today. Now, demagoguing and fear-mongering on access to treatment for miscarriages and ectopic pregnancies, casting a decision to abort or not to abort as an easy one, is a tremendous disservice. I have supported postpartum coverage for women in Medicaid. I've worked on serious legislation to advance maternal health, like the Connected Moms Act with Senator Maggie Hassan, which lets physicians remotely monitor pregnant women for potential complications. From my practice in Louisiana, a woman who's 8.5 months pregnant using public transportation in August in Louisiana. You can empathize with her and understand that if you can remotely monitor her, her life is so much better. Senator Bob Casey and I led legislation, now law, to ensure that pregnant women are entitled to reasonable accommodations in the workforce. There is much more we can do to support the woman who's pregnant. But we should debate and advance legislation so that we're not leaving them without solutions when they are faced with a very difficult, traumatic, and complex question. We want women, moms, to be healthy, successful, and prosperous. And the human life inside a woman triggers the double line that the human life, do a pregnancy test, those double lines come up. Those double lines should not represent a burden, as the other side would like to cast. It should represent a gift. But there's things that we can do to make her life easier. I am open to the tough conversations. I think we should all be. But we shouldn't minimize by dehumanizing. And it must be with respect for both the mother and the defenseless and voiceless unborn child that are participating in that debate. This is too personal for too many Americans. With that, I yield.
We will now